We're gonna get started in just a sec. Thanks for being here. As always, I'm running a little bit late and just setting up stuff. I'll be right there. Hi everyone. Antonio, hi Dots, hi Sia. Nearly there though. I just need to grab all the images and collect them in the program that I use for overpainting. So hi Sheila! Hi Karaf! Let's go Tim! Yeah, let's go it, see ya! WIP Wednesday hype! Making sure that we have everyone in here as well. Let me put my screen on, right? Which one do we need this time? Overpaint. Oh, yeah. Maybe it helps if I actually put on my camera, you know? Lights. And my tablet isn't working. There we go. There's the camera. Let me zoom in a little bit. You can see how prepared I am. You're seeing behind the screen. Hi everyone. Let's get all this stuff set up. Hi Sanad, hi Sarah. Invisible Tim, exactly. The best Tim ever. The invisible one. Let's actually have a look here because this is a really interesting post. Let me see if I gathered the stuff that I want to be talking about. Okay. I think I do. You got populist art in here. Thank you so much to everyone for posting your work again. I really appreciate it. Looking sweet. And then we just got Shubham over here. 2 different materials. This is like a collage live stream. You just see me like make a real-time collage. But this is like arts and crafts with Tim. It's no longer WIP Wednesday. Let's make sure that we save everything as well. Okay, cool. We are good to go. The order is kind of inversed, but let's leave it like that. Hi Dots! How is everybody doing? Thank you for bearing with me as I set up the stream. Time management is definitely my strong suit, you can tell. Oh man, I didn't prepare a random question. Oh no, the stream is gonna fail now. I think that means that we'll just have to dive into it. Oh, no, you know what? Okay, since we're basically in like the full swing of game releases or like game reveals happening, right? Like, what is everyone's favorite game that has been revealed so far? Like from all the showcases, doesn't matter which one. Which is the one thing that you're absolutely excited to play? Sarah saying Starfield. Oh my god. What a surprise, Sarah. Of course it has to be Starfield. Star Wars Outlaws, which... Oh, no, Star Wars Outlook, right? Star Wars Outlook. Yep. So that was looking good. Did it right. I love that. Which you might be working at. That's awesome. That is looking awesome. I think that was the highlight from the Ubisoft one for me. Yeah. I think... Yeah. Maybe that one is... It's the one that I also have to put on the top of that list. I think so. I think so. Starfield is also looking pretty interesting. I like what they're doing with the updates to the engine. You can really tell I was being really critical of all the footage, and yeah, it's looking really good. Honestly, we obviously still have to know more about like the gameplay and all that stuff and what's going to be in it. There's actually like an extended showcase where they may show even more stuff off, but I haven't looked. I haven't looked at it yet. So if it looks fantastic but quite empty in gameplay, yeah, I can see that. It's more like a sandbox approach, right? Where they'll sprinkle stuff in the game, but most of it is going to be up to you. Honestly, that's kind of the game that I love, right? I mean, my favorite game has been Fallout 4, and more recently Cyberpunk. Like those games where they just immerse me into like a new world, like are freaking amazing. So hey, whatever new world comes out, I'm really curious to explore it. Like Avatar was looking interesting as well. That was looking really interesting too. Not as interesting as Star Wars, I have to say, in my opinion. I mean, this is my opinion anyway, right? So this is not indicative of anything. What else was there? It's too much. Oh, there's a whole bunch of indie games that I still need to get through, like Frostpunk 2. That was looking really cool as well, even though it was like a teaser trailer. But I loved the first one, so I think that's going to be good. What else was there? What else was there? Layers of Fear 2. It was also... Dang it. There was a really interesting looking pixelated game that kind of looked like Kingdom, but it wasn't from the same makers as Kingdom, so it has no relevancy to it, but it just immediately immediately reminded me of that game. Clockwork Revolution, Sarah's saying as well. That looked interesting, but that genre, I don't know what it is. Like, it's just totally not for me. You know, like the whole... I don't want to put it in a box, right? But like, I'll call it like steampunk or something like that. That's just not my vibe at all. Like, yeah, something about it, you know, like BioShock never interested me as games, like especially the last one, right? Like, I don't know. Didn't really do it for me. It's breaking my heart right now. I know, like, it's weird. Like, there's a lot of interesting examples like that where I just didn't really vibe with the game. Like, I loved the visuals of Prey, right? But then once I played the game, I was like, this is just not doing it for me. You know? And I think, honestly, that's what games should be, right? There's so many games. There's so many games out there that really... that it becomes really niche, right? There's something out there for everyone. The art in the first one was groundbreaking at that time. Honestly, can't remember. Yeah, I didn't even play it on release. You know, if we're still talking about BioShock. Yeah, I think I've got this is so weird. But I've got a lot of my first experiences with games whenever we went to a fast food restaurant and they had like a booth where kids could play on that was behind like protective glass. a lot of my first game experiences with like really big franchises have been on those stupid consoles in like fast food chains. Really weird, quirky thing, but yeah, that's where a lot of my experience comes from, especially in the beginning. If it ages well, that's when you know they did a good job. I think, yeah, Dishonored is also one of those games, right? Where the art looks absolutely gorgeous, but the game is just not for me. And I think talking about that, like making something timeless, I think Dishonored is such a good example of that, in my opinion. Oh my god, the way I was able to play some old games when they had the old arcade looking machines with the console at the dentist? At the dentist? Okay. So, yeah. I can see the priorities, right? Like, I got most of my games at a fast food chain, and you got it at a dentist. Hi, Corey! You like what you like? Exactly. It's still really interesting to discuss it, though. Like, there's also like the opposite side of the spectrum, right? Where I don't care about cars at all. I don't have a driver's license or anything like that. But then I still get interested when they show off like the Crew Motorfest or whatever. I was like, yeah, that looks fun. I want to play that. Interesting. Yeah, what else is in this list? Hi, William! Pragmata is looking. I saw something for that, but I haven't looked at it. This is honestly, I don't know if Pragmata is in this case, right? But like there's a whole genre of like killer, like Eastern games that I haven't really delved into, like Persona. I think Persona is one of the. I think Persona 5 is the highest rated game on Metacritic, right? Or at least like in the top 10 or something like that. So it always made me curious to play it, even though it's like totally not my thing. It would be like really interesting to play something like that. Okay, enough chatting about games though. Thank you so much for throwing in all the good replies, and also hi Andrea. I hope you're doing well today. I'm doing well. How are you doing? But yeah, thank you so much for sharing your answers. It's time for some feedback, isn't it? So today we have a couple of people here from the community. I kind of compiled, like, these are two separate posts from Shubham that we're going to be looking at first. But I've kind of compiled them into like one gallery so that we can look at how to improve this. Because yeah, so we have two materials here, right? So we have this one here, and then we have this one here as well. So two variations. And overall, it's really looking good. I like how these are looking, right? Like, the roughness here looks really nice. Like, where you can see, I think you might even be able to push it a little bit more. But like, I like the interaction between like the dirt in the crevices and then like the shinier top parts where people have been constantly walking over, right? So that's really cool to see. With some of these sections, you have to watch out that that's basically caused by the height map having to make a transition from like lower values in the black range to like white values with like minimal amount of pixels to actually deal with, right? So that's why we're getting like this kind of stretching going up. The easiest way to do that is to go into like one of your base shapes and like slightly blur it so that you give it like a little bit more information. Little bit more information to work with. right? Because that's, you kind of see that it's not really that big of a deal, right? You usually only see it in renders where they're presented in Substance Designer. You will probably never see this in like an actual game scenario. So it's a very minor thing, right? What I would also say about like this iteration is that you can probably do a little bit more with breaking up the grid feeling, right? Because it's very safe in conforming to the original tile sampler grid, where yeah, the lines are very uniform, right? So having, where's the edge of my canvas here? So I would say push the position and the rotation of these individual tiles like ever so slightly. Even a bit more than you're doing now. And just slightly. Obviously you need to be careful that you don't break your flood fills that you're probably using, but yeah. That would be a good one. To kind of give it a little bit more of an organic feel, right? And then also, I like these edges, right? Like these ones, where we're doing edge breakup. So edges like these are nice. The only thing that I would say is they're probably a bit too smooth. So I would probably expect like some areas to be like a little bit more jagged, right? And have like a little bit more sharper edges. Right? And then you can apply that to like a lot of the other areas, because it does really feel like it's like very soft, right? And that's kind of what the thing that you want to avoid with this. Hi Vibhu! Hope you're doing well. Yeah, I'm doing great. Thank you so much. Happy to have you here. How are you doing? So yeah, that's one thing to look at, like sharpening those edges where you have like damage on the sides. That would be cool. And then also thinking about like certain areas where that can, I think you can use more of it in general, because it's also quite uniform at this point, right? Like you have, like if we look at like all the shapes, like all the damage that's happening, it's all kind of the same size in shape, but what you actually want is have big, medium, small, right? You want to have that transition. So what I would say now is you have the medium shapes sorted out, but I think you can push like some bigger cracks, right? Like where you really like cut out like a big chunk of the rock and then make it look like really nice or something like that, right? Obviously, always check the tiling. You need to keep that in mind. But then also on the opposite side of the spectrum, like having like little cracks, right? Like kind of the stuff that is happening here already, where you have like a little crack. It's kind of breaking this up. I like what's going on here. I just want to see more of that on certain edges. Right, especially like most of the edges are like really uniform in that way. And having like a tiny bit of breakup would be really nice. Like pushing it a bit more would be cool. Yeah, but that's what I would say. I like this comparison as well. Like where you have the three of them next to each other, right? Where you can see like this is the dirty variant and this is like the clean variant. What I do want to see if you present something like this Oh, you can actually kind of see it already. Hi Vivek! So you can kind of already see some stuff happening, right? It's like this is pretty clean. And then you have like the damaged version. And then you have the dirty version. Let me actually look. Yeah, okay, so I don't have the post open here, but it's actually what you say in your thingy as well, in your post. So you have like the normal version, then slightly aged, and then like dust and dirt on top of it. I would love to see like more damage here. Really emphasize that this is like the dirty, broken version of your tiles, and then this is a clean version, right? Where maybe you could even push the roughness a bit more as well. Because you can see that the roughness is, especially this spot, right? Always remains the same. So that means to me that you're probably doing most of your adjustments in the height, normal, and base color, but you're actually forgetting the most important map that there is, and that's the roughness, right? So try to push that as well while you're doing this too. So you could have less variation in the clean one, and then go to more roughness variation, and then like real contrast in the roughness. Right? And that's about that version 1. There's also one thing else that I want to add, but I'm actually going to use this example that you have added here, because I think that actually showcases like this way better. And that's how you blend materials together. At the moment, it kind of feels like the bottom material doesn't affect the tiles that you add on top of them, right? So there's, if we look at like this gap, for example, there's no real material blending happening. Right? It's almost like the bottom sand is just like a plane that gets moved up. But normally what you would expect to see is that you have more of a transition, right? So that this actually gets affected by the sand as well. And that the sand kind of fades off towards like as it gets closer to this section, right? So you could have like little sections of sand and like still cling onto it. A high blend could help with that. I think what could really help is really making the height of the bottom layer, like the sand layer, making that more diverse on, or like more contrasting on the white and the black spectrum, so that there's more information to then blend the stones within that. So a high blend with an easy way to do is auto leveling. However, the auto leveling isn't going to give you as much control as you probably want, right? So like a normal level node or like a histogram scan and a histogram can definitely be interesting to look into as well. Because yeah, like that's something that you kind of want to be careful of, right? Is the transition between the two things. And then also like another thing is be careful with stuff like this, right? Haunted, new. Like, you kind of want to be careful with the continuity, especially from cracks when they go from like one stone to the other. Usually this damage doesn't come from when the stones are actually on the floor already, but it comes from when they're carved and then put into the stonework, right? So, like, a lot of this would probably be unique per tile, which for that you can use a flood fill and then make a mask with a flood fill. Like a flood fill to random grayscale will do like a lot in these situations. And then also watch out for the directionality of these cuts, right? Like the repetition as well. So the repetition of these like diagonal cuts that are all kind of flowing in the same direction, right? You kind of want to keep that in mind as well. What I will say though, like I do really like them though. Like they look really nice. Like it almost feels like this is more your stylistic approach, right? Where I could see that in a game like Pillars of Eternity or something like that. And then this goes towards like your Assassin's Creed. If you have to make like game comparisons, right? So it's looking pretty cool. If you want to make something, well, this kind of goes into the base color, right? Like usually if you look at scans or you look at real life surfaces, they have a ton of complexity in their base color, like a lot of it. Where the base color here, for example, in this case is again only per tile, right? Which makes it kind of look artificial. Well, not really artificial, but because you have that in the real world as well, right? But then you usually have more color variation on top of that to kind of bring the whole thing together again. So again, if we're thinking about big, medium, small, I think the way that you're approaching your base color right now is you focus on like the big stuff first, right? But you haven't done like the medium details and then the small details necessarily. Especially on this one. I think this one actually looks really like it looks more complex already, and I think you've done this one after you did the other one, so it kind of makes sense. Right? Like if there's a post here that I didn't bring up. But if we look at this post, you can actually get a glimpse of like the complexity in the base color, and I think that's definitely going into the right direction for something like this. But I would say keep pushing it. Right? Like there's a sneaky thing that I learned from Antoine Dejean, who did a workshop for us like in the previous months. And it's kind of an interesting one. So you take a random noise, right? It just needs to be random noise in Substance Designer, and then you gradient map it. And for the color for the gradient map, you just use all the icons that are on the toolbar in Substance Designer. So it will be just like random noise. And then you add that as a last step onto your base color with like a very low opacity, but it gives that feeling of like a very complex looking base color because it has so much noise in it, right? Like it makes it look more complex than it actually is. Hey, is it still possible to send you projects for the stream, and how? Not for this one, unfortunately, but you can always do it for next week. And the best way to do that is to become a member of our community. So if you become a member here on YouTube or you go to beyondextent.com, you can get instant access to our community. Thank you so much for the question. So yeah, adding a bit more color variation. Or like layering. Probably a better way to say it, right? Because the color variation is there, but it is purely done on like a tile by tile basis, where I think you got the base sorted out. I think it's more about like adding to that base in this case, right? But yeah, honestly, what I'm seeing here, it's very cool. Like, I love the steps that you see from like material 1 to material 2 and the improvements that you've made. Just doing this by yourself, right? So keep on practicing it. I think you're getting to a point where it becomes more and more about like the smaller stuff now, right? Like the attention to details and like actually seeing how something has been eroded over time, or how something has been affected by, yeah, I mean, same thing, right? Like by water or wind or something like that, or by people as well. And also, like, I'll give you like a little tip. If you present this on your portfolio, always try to have it in the context in the world and not just only on the spheres themselves. Like, it's always cool to see, like, hey, this is a cool material, but what does it actually look like on a wall with a pillar or something like that, right? Like, in context, in the world. And present it nicely, you got a winner on your hands. So yeah, great stuff. Great stuff. Thank you so much for putting your work up here, Shubham. Thank you so much. Let me check before we move on to the next thing, right? I don't think there was any comments from Shubham, so okay. Then we can just move on. We've got Antonio next. And then we've got Sikaru. And then we've got Populous. Alright, Antonio. Let's have a look, shall we? Any feedback will be good. Okay, so not looking for anything specific. Yeah, the thing that Iowana brought up as well was the thing that I'm gonna be bringing up too. Is like the wood doesn't feel good at the moment. Hey Ahmad, how are you doing? So the wood doesn't particularly feel good, especially here where you can really see like the tiling of it, right? Like that's not what I love to see. Yeah, you'll have to find like ways to break that up, because now you can really see the tiling, right? Usually that begins with like setting the scale of the actual texture that you're going to be using on it, not to tile, but like actually just to affect the whole thing by itself, right? Depending on how you set that up. But I'll leave that up to you. You gotta be really careful, especially with the warping and with any repetition, really, right? Then let's have a look. The other thing that I'll bring up, and I think this is more fundamental, like a fundamental issue, is baking this. I don't even know if it was baked. Right? There are indications that you're baking stuff down here, I think. But like the rest of it, like it doesn't have any like edge normals or like any edge information that would help soften the transition from like the top to the side or something like that, right? Yeah, I would really. I don't know if you're still in here, Antonio, but I'm just gonna ask this question. Like, is this baked? Because if it is, then you'll definitely have to go back to the bake. And there's oh my god, I should have saved this. Will actually shares this picture a lot where it's you want to overemphasize the bevels on your bake so that they retain their looks over a longer distance. So yeah, you actually want to overemphasize the bevels that you add onto your models compared to what they look like in real life. Right? And I think yeah, because here like it's just geometry. So the more that I look at this, the more that I'm starting to speculate that this is just all geometry and there's no baking in the process. And then that might be done in texture. I don't know. No, there's a little lip there as well. Also geo. But yeah, that's the main thing, right? Like this feels like a very old school gun in the way that guns were approached in like games at a certain point, right? When they didn't really have access to normal maps, or they were still pretty expensive or whatever. It kind of feels like they were trying to hand paint as much as possible to get the gun looking as good as possible, but you're still gonna see the rough edges of the geometry, right? And for a current gen game, especially if you want to put it on your portfolio, you need to bake that down. Like you need to have those softened edges, and you need to, because it is the reason why I hammer on it so much, especially with the gun, because it is a core component of being of your skill set as an artist, right? Especially if you're doing hard surface stuff, you need to know how to bake and the different ways of baking, right? Like when you would sub D model compared to when you would use a floater for certain aspects, right? Like those things are very important. So for example, you could sub D model, or well, sub D is also restrictive, right? Like you could high poly model this magazine, because the reason why I'm trying to stay away from just sub D is because it doesn't necessarily have to be done all in 3ds Max or Maya. What you could also do is have your low poly looking really good, bring that into ZBrush, polish it up so that you get it looking like nice softened edges for your high poly, then bake that down onto your original low poly, right? So it doesn't all have to be done in Max or Maya. It can also be done in different ways and different methods. Yeah, this could be a method potentially of having the base of the object as a high poly object, and then the stuff that you add on top of it as a floater, which is basically just gonna be a bit of floating geometry that's floating above this magazine slightly, but it doesn't matter because the things are gonna get baked down onto the low poly, which is just like a flat piece of geometry anyway, right? So it's gonna project that information down as if it was a part of the main high poly object. Yeah. Then yeah, I mean, there are other things that I could bring up, right? But I don't think I'm gonna do that because getting the bake correctly, like, is so crucial to getting to the next step of your artistic journey that's probably the thing that I want to emphasize the most here. I know it's rough. I know it's boring. I know it's freaking technical as hell and it can be confusing at times. But Antonio, you've got access to our PDF, right? There's a whole section on baking and how to hopefully make it really easy for you to understand baking. So yeah, read through that. Also, if you really want to quickly understand it, take one piece of the gun. Don't do the entire gun. Try to set yourself up for success by just doing like the one thing and the one thing only, and then move into all the other parts once you have understood like the baking process. Like once you're absolutely certain that this is the way that it should work, then you can move on to like the other parts of the gun, right, and finish the whole thing. It's I feel like a gun. So okay, let me give you some background, right? Like I wanted to make 3D because I loved making worlds. And I was always excited when I could make like a whole world, even though it would never get finished because I didn't have the required skill set. I feel like a gun is almost like the same dream, but then for someone who really wants to do props, right? Or like hard surface objects, let's say. But it's like you need to build up to it because it's a damn complex thing. Like honestly, like a gun like this, super complex. If you want to get it all looking right and all baked down nicely and then all textured nicely as well, this thing is super complex. So yeah, not that I'm trying to scare you away from it, right? But I'm trying to make you aware that sometimes as artists we bite off more than we can chew. That's why I'm saying, like, take for example the magazine. Try to get that looking good by just baking that thing down first, and then moving on to the other parts of the prop. Bake comes first. And I think once you've got the bake done on one part, right? Like you could even then like quickly unwrap it. Well, you need to for the bake anyway. Like quickly texture it maybe, and then maybe figure out like how to texture stuff and kind of use it as a benchmark, right? This is also like another insight that like we do inside the industry as well. Like if we're gonna be trying something new, and in this case something new means something outside of your comfort zone. Like usually what you do is you build a benchmark to see how far you can push it and what is needed for you to push it to that quality. I would say the benchmark in this case could be either the magazine or the scope itself, and use that as like a testing bed to then see if you still want to push it further on or not. And then we'll talk about all the rest of the things, Antonio. So keep it up. Keep it up. Because like the modeling is solid, right? Like the proportions and like the way that the guns look. Like I've seen, I mean, I'm not a gun nut, right? Like I have only seen this gun like a handful of times in games, but it's recognizable, right? And that's a feat by itself. So you did a really good job on that. You then only just need to, yeah, you need to take the proper steps, right? And the sooner you take those proper steps, like the sooner you're gonna get into a position where you're actually hireable in this case. So keep it up, Antonio. Like the modeling is solid. Just keep on grinding on that workflow, buddy. Okay. Next up, we got Isukari. And this, I had to do a double take because this one is quite confusing. So let me go through the whole post again, right? So, they're making a game jam, and the game that they're making is a game or like a laboratory that experiments on dreams, right? So and then Isukari is gonna make the environments for that. Currently, they're looking for feedback pertaining to props I'm using, how I should best manage time spent on certain assets, given the ones made so far aren't hero assets. And we'll be using a post-processing shader that uses dithering in Unity. The first image is a test image showing what the game will look like. Okay, so let me add this image on here as well to kind of give some context as well to what we're looking at. Let me just quickly get it on here too. So, okay, this is the look that you're gonna go for. Let's just squish this a little bit. Kind of get the point on that one. All right, so if that is the style that you're gonna go for, right? The first thing that needs to happen, and I kind of alluded to it like earlier as well, is you need to build a benchmark. If this is the art style, right, which is an interesting choice, then what you have to do as an artist in this case, you have to know where the limitations of the things that you'll be doing lie, right? And what that means in this case is you need to get like one asset that has a certain amount of complexity, right? Like not just a box or something like that, but like something that has, like for example, this desk over here. Let's take that as an example, right? And then apply that style to it. Because a lot of what you're gonna see here with the dithering is actually gonna make you lose a lot of the texture information, or like a lot of the information, the complexity of the model itself is gonna be lost when you're applying it to the art style, right? Which is all fine. Like if this is an art style that you chose, that's all fine, but you don't want to be wasting time making stuff that you're not going to be seeing because you have chosen this art style, right? I hope that makes sense so far. So I would say do that first, right? Like benchmark test first. Because I can guarantee you. Where is some of the other stuff here? So I'm gonna bring in this image as well. Go away, assistant. So if we, for example, look at this image, right? Like a lot of the detail. Where's my chat? So like a lot of the detail that you can see on here is actually not going to be visible with what I think your implementation is going to be for your art style. That means that you can cut a whole bunch of corners because you don't need to spend like a whole bunch of time making detail that you're never going to see, right? So like all these bolts, for example. So yeah, maybe you can even use this one as like a benchmark. Right? So first you need to figure out what is lost in the style. That's what you're gonna try to figure out first, right? So get this asset into the game. Talk to your programmers. See if they can build you, if it's not yet there, but I think it is, right? See if they can build you like a little test area where you can just drag in stuff and then see what it looks like with the given camera distance that the game will have as well, which is going to be important too, right? Because you don't want to be looking at this, like, let's say from this camera angle, if the game is never even going to get close to that. So keep the camera in mind too. It's going to be important. And this can become your benchmark asset. But like, this entire roster that you've implemented, you are gonna really have to thicken that up if you want it to still be visible in the dithering, because especially if you're gonna be looking straight at it, like that's all gonna be lost and the roster is even not gonna be visible anymore, right? So you'll have to overemphasize certain aspects of your assets to still make sense within your art style of your choosing. So yeah, make sure that you test this a lot and test it early with everything that you do, right? Like with every asset that you're making, like get into the game as quickly as you can and then see what it looks like in the context that the game is gonna have. Right? So that's the first big thing. Then the next big thing, based on those what do you call it? Like initial searches, right? Like initial explorations into what you need to do to have your art still be unique within that art style. You're gonna also discover that, yeah, like a lot of this stuff also doesn't need to be there either. Right? So what you are probably gonna have to do is find a way to make your assets in a way where they make sense, right? I mean, we're kind of going around the circles here, but that also means that there's probably like no need for you to like uniquely unwrap something like this, where you could almost just make it out of very basic materials that almost have no noise, because the dithering is going to introduce like a lot of noise back into the game as well, right? Obviously, now we're getting into the weeds. If you still want to, if the art style is still a bit too flat at that point, you might choose to like reintroduce some noise on the textures. However, I don't see the need to make like unique textures for all of the assets, and you can just use tilables instead. So swapping unique for tileable. The reason why is because that is gonna significantly increase the amount of stuff that you can put in the game, and rather than focus on making the individual things look really great, you're gonna actually focus on making the game look great instead. Right? You don't want to get caught up like focusing on like the minute details when you're working on a very ambitious project where there's a lab that's going to experiment on dreams. So I'm anticipating that you want to show off some of these individual dreams as well, which means that you'll have to produce a lot of art in that time, right? So we kind of have to find a way to really optimize that whole process with either tilables, or I'll add another one here, or trim sheets. And what that means is, instead of having like all individual unique textures, you're gonna swap to like a more modular system, that where if you want to make something, let's say you want to make like a variation of a chair, right? That becomes like half an hour instead of like half a day, because you don't need to make like a high poly, you don't need to make like the low poly, bake it down, all that stuff, texture it. Like all the texturing and all that stuff is done because you're reusing the materials that you've set up before, right? So it's switching your mindset from like working hard to working smart. That's what you need to focus on for this, right? So either using titleables, where again, depending on the test that you do, like you can go pretty far with titleables. Like honestly, like for the game that's gonna look like it's gonna be dittered like this, titleables are gonna get you like a long way. And yeah, for some cases you might even want to use trim sheets, right? It depends on what you want to use or what you need, right? You can make like I don't know if you know what a trim sheet is, but I'll give you like a quick introduction. Like a trim sheet is basically the texture that is going to be made out of trims. Makes sense, right? So you could have like a whole bunch of different trims, and then whatever, let's say you can even have like a couple of end pieces embedded in there, right? And then instead of looking at your UVs in a really unique way, what you'll be doing is, oh, I have this sort of aspect ratio, right? Like this sort of area to work with. So I'm probably going to map that here. You know, so you're just going to map that here. Cool, snap that on there. This top face is a little bit bigger, so I'm probably going to snap that here instead. Very quick and dirty exploration, right? Like, go actually check out our, well, you're on our YouTube channel right now. We have a couple of workshops on trim sheets and how to set them up. And there's also a whole breakdown guide on our website as well, if you want to go check that out, how trim sheets work. I'll give you a quick example from the scene that I'm working on to really drive home the point a little bit. Because it's just me, right? I'm working on a scene that needs to be volume rather than, well, it needs to be big, right? So I'm making like a medieval town. And like trim sheets are awesome for doing like a thing with the same texture, right? So all the wood that you see here, all of it, apart from the bark here, like on the wall, all the wood, one texture. Like from the carts to the houses to the shed, like the walkway over here to the boxes to the barrels, all one texture. And if I want to make like a new cart that looks completely different, it's literally gonna take me an hour from start to finish. I mean, maybe a couple more if I really want to put the details into it, right? But yeah, it gives you like a ton of flexibility, a ton of maneuverability, and you also don't get too precious when you're working on the game jam, which can be also dangerous, where you get too precious about the things that you're building because you still want to show off stuff for your portfolio. So you kind of think that you have to do things unique, but yeah, there's a conflict there, right? So try to do it this way. Yes. I think honestly, those are like the two big points that I want to bring up here, right? And that is going to have an impact on like all the stuff that you're going to do, but it's going to make you way more flexible, way more versatile, and way quicker on iteration as well. So let's say the program is like, hey, I got this cool idea. Maybe we can do something like this. You have an awesome creative idea to solve that problem that they come up with. You can build it in like half an hour and it's going to look decent enough, you know, unless you want to go polish it afterwards. So yeah, flexibility is key, especially for a game jam. And then that looks absolutely amazing. I'll definitely look at the channel guides then for trim sheets and dive into that. Sounds way more practical. Yeah, I think for a game jam, you kind of have to, right? Because Yeah, let's be honest, like a game jam, especially a game jam, is more about speed and like quick maneuverability than it is about making stuff look good. And the sooner, trust me, like I've been in a bunch of game jams where I tried to make stuff look good and try to really polish it, and then I had one thing that looks halfway decent, but the rest of the game looks absolute crap. You know? You don't want to be in my position. I'll do like a bonus one, right? Because I'm looking at these UVs and there's like a lot of optimization that can happen here. I'm gonna leave it with this. Dunk dunk. So, just say, with all the gaps in between, you're probably wasting 50% of your UV space here. Where the simple solution here would be to do something like this instead. Where all the smaller stuff that you have here, and like basically all this stuff, can easily be put inside of this like empty sections. And then you could even try to pack some of the other stuff in a bit more, and maybe even go down like a texture size, where you really optimally use the amount of stuff that you're packing into your UVs. Especially if you make all these like slanted things like straight, it's gonna save you like a ton of space. So try to keep that in mind for if you're doing like a unique unwrap. Let's say a hero prop, right? Like let's say in your game jam competition, there's one thing that needs to be the standout thing in the scene. Try to utilize your UV space a little bit better, because that is going to be really important. Because yeah, if you look at it this way, right? Like let's say, for the sake of our example, this is a 2K texture. But you're not using 50% of it, and this is a mind fuck, right? Like you're not wasting 1K, but you're actually wasting 2 1Ks, because a 2K is made up by 4 1Ks. So yeah, you're basically throwing out like 2 texture maps that you can potentially use for something else, right? Or that are just like not even used. So try to optimize that a little bit. Yeah, I know this was a lot, right? But I really felt that we needed to go back to basics and really re-emphasize like what you, well, first of all, like what you need to focus on, right? And that is like trying to be as maneuverable as you can be and like working smarter, not harder. But then also figuring out what the limitations are of the art that you can add to the game, right? And then once we have those 2 things like working hand in hand, this is going to be a pleasure to work on, because you're going to make so much more. Like you can actually go a little bit crazy. Once you got the trim sheet set up, once you got the titleable set up, whatever you want to do, you can actually spend your time on actually making cool stuff. And that's what you want to do with a game jam, right? So yeah. Best of luck. When does it end again? 10th of August? Yeah. Good luck. Good luck. And yeah, we'll be here in the meantime every Wednesday. So if I can help you more, let me know. And thank you so much for putting your work on here as well. Thank you, Isukari. Last one of the day. Let me read through chat as well, because I kind of missed. Oh, so Billboard was asking when we were talking about the gun that Antonio was doing, what's a way to get better edge normals in this case? In that case, it's having a high poly and baking it down. I think. If you do have a high poly on the gun, which would honestly kind of surprise me from the things that I can see in the 2 shots that I've gotten, then it would be... Oh my god, there's a couple of things that we need to look at, right? Like, either the bake is not happening, which means that the 2 objects might be in like completely different locations. That's like a very quick thing to always check, because sometimes that happens. The other thing is if your bevels in your high poly are big enough, right? I think it's not even the case that they aren't big enough in this case, because they weren't even visible. Like, if you would see pinching on the bevels, like in the low poly, we would have noticed that, right? So I don't think that's the case. I think it's just, yeah, fundamentals that were the issue in that case. Admiral Magbar, hello! How are you doing, buddy? Arekusu is saying, yup, tileable plus trim sheets via UV sets would be the way I would go. It's awesome. It's absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for all the advice and the information about texture sheets, trim sheets, and resolution. Yeah, you're welcome. Like, I mean, it's a very crucial topic to learn, right? Like, once you start diving into trim sheets, I think it's going to open your mind and look at like a whole new perspective of how you can build stuff. Because the fact of the matter is, if you want to build something at scale, you have to use trim sheets, or you have to use tileables and like a technique on top of that or something. Like, you can't make a world where everything is unique. Like, that would be crazy. Unless you have, not even unless you have, if you look at the bigger games, right? Like, if you look at an Assassin's Creed, they will use as many of those shortcuts as they can to also remain flexible and to still build a world, right? Because the worlds that they make are enormous. And they do not build everything from scratch. They build the stuff that needs to look good by hand and like unique, and then for the rest of it, they might use like other techniques. They used a lot of smart techniques in those games. Okay, Populous. Let's have a look. Let me get some context first from our chat over here. This is the project that I'm doing for my course for Unreal. I've been working on it quite a long time now. There's still a lot of stuff that I want to add, like the clouds that actually hold the islands. I'm probably going to redo quite a few things, as well as I still have plenty of time to finish it. I'm not worried about it. There's always quite a few things that need to be done. And it's the biggest project that I've tackled so far. I am open to any form of feedback and ideas, and would really like to hear what you guys have to say. Awesome. Okay, so I cherry-picked 3 angles that I'm going to be riffing on for this one. Hi, Puns! I'm doing good. How are you doing? So yeah, like the 3 angles that I kind of chosen here are like 2 more zoomed in ones, and then we got the middle one, which is a little bit more zoomed out. But yeah, I think actually like the core stuff is there, right? I feel like you have a lot of the building bricks that are needed to make something interesting. I think right now it just becomes about like pushing it further. And I think how you can push it further is to really start thinking about like what the story is here, right? And using that as a foundation to then guide you towards the rest of the environment. Because there is a story, right? Or else they wouldn't be like floating islands. But Why? Okay, let me write down a couple of questions, right? That might help you. So questions is how are they floating? Right? How are they floating? Who lives here? Right? And what do they do? Right? These are like 3 quick questions that once you kind of answer them for yourself, they're gonna give you like really interesting ideas back. So if we say like, hey, who lives here? There's like a giant tower, so maybe it's like an old sailor that is lighting up this lighthouse and is kind of like signaling to other floating islands out there that, hey, stay away, like we're gonna be in collision at some point, right? But even with that stupid thing that I just came up with on the fly, you can already tell like, oh, it's an old sailor, right? Like a captain of the skies. And like, what would a captain of the skies day look like? And what would he wear? Like, what would they look like? Not necessarily that you have to make a character, right? But you can actually do some pretty cool things there. So you would probably, from my story, right? I'm not saying that you have to do it this way. You can come up with your own story. You can brainstorm yourself, right? But we're gonna riff on the thing that I just came up with. Is we're gonna assume that this is a lighthouse. What kind of light is gonna be in here? Right? Like maybe it's a dang floating crystal. You know, that's like suspended here. And it's still casting like a ray of light. But then also you can kind of see in here like the sailors or like the guys or the person's like private quarters, you know, where you can see like maybe a bunk bed or something like that. And I'm assuming he doesn't have fear of heights. So I don't know, you can do like a lot of cool stuff. Right, you could even have like a little stool up here with like a little area where he sits in the morning. You know, that's just like looking out for other people. And then he would probably, so this is going to be a door, like a nice sturdy wooden door or something like that. There's his path here as well. Right, so where does that path go to? Maybe that path goes to like, I don't know, like a jetty or a pier or something like that, right? That kind of sticks out. Or if he needs to go down and do some shopping, you know? There's a pier for the floating boat. Oh, you kind of already have one here. But I would probably still connect it with this one. Right, because there is such, like, even in, I think it's this shot, right? Like you have this bridge here, and it's so apparent to me that there just needs to be like a connection here. You know, so you have like the main path. Right, maybe like a little fence next to it. Then you got like the wooden door. And then maybe over here. Maybe over here there's like a gravel path or something. The reason why I write breakfast is because I kind of like this kind of lookout that you've got going here. So maybe instead of like a lookout, this becomes like his chill place, you know, where he has like a chair set up, he has like a little table set up with like a little bit of wine or something like that. You know, and now we're trying to make connections, right? Like trying to set up like this little island as like a place that is filled with like little stories. There's a bridge in the making in between those two islands. Oh, I don't have the shot here. Is there a bridge in the making? Oh, I see. That's a different island, right? I mean, it doesn't really matter. Like, it's up to you, right? What you do with that. Yeah, okay. What you do with this bridge, small thing. Think about how these islands would float, right? So you would probably need like a flexible bridge instead of like a sturdy wooden one. Small thing. Oh, okay. I see. So you could actually have like a little jetty coming out, and then you could have like a rope bridge or something like that, right? Connecting the two pieces. Then really play with like the silhouette. Oh, you can do so much cool stuff with this. So much cool stuff that you can do. So excited. You can make it look like really self-built, you know? Yeah, like try to make everything make sense, right? Like maybe, oh, you know what would be cool? Okay, now we're going to Crazy Town, right? I'm just spitting ideas. What if? And maybe that's the case already. So I don't know if that was your idea or not. What if these islands are connected? And this is their propulsion, right? So this is how they go forward. What if you could actually do something where there's like I don't know, like a rudder or something attached to it? Where like it's kind of being pulled forward in a direction, right? With the control over like these other islands or something, where it's like they're all kind of connected together and they're using each other as like propulsion. Especially because you got these things going on, so maybe that was already the case, right? Maybe I'm jumping the gun a little bit. But yeah, it's more about like visually showing off what is happening, right? Like if this was the case, like making it connected to the island is gonna actually make it physically connected to it. Whereas if it's just like a separate island, like it kind of feels like it could just go in its own way, you know? Might you have a barn there? A barn is a pretty cool idea. Yeah. You could even have like a mini farm, you know? Because that's also the thing, right? Like if they are living on this island, like either I don't know, we turn this into the pier now, right? Like the dock, let's say. So this is the dock now, and then this is the bridge. Right. So if we then turn that into a dock, we can kind of make the, or we're kind of saying that, hey, sometimes they do go away, but for the most part they try to be as sustainable as they can. So there's probably gonna be like farms or something. When I was making them, I always in my head imagined the islands as stationary, held by the clouds, but the idea of moving islands seems pretty cool. I think, look, this is not what I'm trying to do, right? Like, I'm trying to give you ideas. If you want to do it like that, you could also do it, but then I feel you need to get rid of these guys and have them static instead, because now it feels like if you're adding these windmills to it, like they give the indication that they're flying away, right? So it's totally up to you what you want to do with it, right? It's more about like how you visually convey what is happening then. Because you could always have it like fully static and then have them held up by the clouds. That could also be a cool idea. That would also make it easier if you want to build bridges between them, right? Because then the islands are not necessarily going to move as much and all that. It could still be cool. Yeah, you would have like a little dirt path going over here. Yeah. Just spitballing ideas. Spitballing ideas. Yeah, so on the idea front, I think we're good, right? I think that the main thing is just like making sure that you've got this path in here, right? Some pathing always helps a lot. And then you kind of reinforce that there's a transition there, like have some dirt on the edges as well. Right? Have like the terrain blend a little bit more. Be cool. Like I'm trying to look for breakup, right? Like a combination of breakup and also adding visual interest on top of it. Maybe even overemphasizing some of the things that are already going on. So you have the door here. But like, I think the fences could add a lot. Like this is where a trim sheet would be perfect, right? You make like a wood trim sheet with just like a couple of planks, and you can really go to town making like all these like nice looking unique fences for your whole scene. And then you're adding like a lot of visual interest, right? I think you already have some wood lying around anyway, so might as well reuse that if possible. Right, and then you've got the big rocks, which are looking quite nice. Just add some smaller rocks, and then maybe some pebbles as well. Same for here. Like, this is also done very stereotypically, is try to work in clusters, right? Where you have the big shapes, the medium shapes, and the small shapes, like working in tandem. Also, these barrels, right? I think you have them placed kind of all over the place. Like in more than one location. Let's have a look. I think it would be cool to You could have them in like a single place somewhere where there's like a storage area, right? Or like, I don't know, beer kegs or whatever. And then maybe occasionally you could leave another one at another place where they're still like offloading or unloading it onto something else, right? Like where it makes sense. But like having it in like the middle in a grass field next to a rock doesn't really make that much sense, right? So trying to be a bit more consistent. Oh, you got some wooden planks here. It's looking awesome. Yeah. You could even use these nice ones as like little decoration next to the path as well, right? It could actually be awesome. Instead of the fence, to make it something more mystical, right? Or maybe combine the two. It could be nice. Yeah, that's what I've been saying, Pop. It's like I like the base setup, right? That's also why I went a little bit crazy with like the idea that I'm adding on top of it. But honestly, it's yours, right? Like do whatever you want to do with it. There's a lot of potential of making this cool. Like this scene look really awesome. It's gonna be important that you just show it in like as visually as you can, right? Fun to say, environment art is so fun. A lot of things are going on. I mean, a lot of imagination and different ideas. We have to come up with a story if we have to make it one. Yeah. What do you love, stylized or AAA environment? Is that catered to me, puns? Because I don't care. Like I love both. I only make one, right? I'm more for like the realistic one, but what I love both. What is saying? Honestly, these crazy ideas are exactly what I needed to fresh up my look on the environment. Yeah, that's awesome. Happy to provide crazy ideas. Always in the market for those. But yeah, it's I think the thing that I'll leave it with, right, is all the things that I've said before. Like basically this entire talk is gonna purely rely on what you want to do with it, right? Because let's say if you don't add the fence here, but you add these like magical pillars instead, that is a choice, right? And you're pushing it more into like the magical realm compared to like the realistic realm. They can both be good, you know? So it's, think about, and that's why I think if we go back to the beginning, like who lives here, right? If we then switch it to my captain to like a freaking wizard, you know? Screw those fences, those magical stones are staying instead. You know what I'm saying? Like it's reinforcing the story that you want to portray to the people that are going to be looking at this. So yeah, think about some of these questions, like really try to role play, right? Like who would be living here? Like, yeah, who would be living here? What would they be doing? Like, how do they get food? How do they get water? I mean, water is very apparent, right? They live right next to a spring. But yeah, even then, right? Like with a simple thing like that, like how do they collect water, right? Like maybe there's like a tiny bucket next to it where they collect water. And there's like a tiny bit on the path. You know, you can do a lot with this stuff. So I'm really curious to see what you're going to do with it, Populous. And thank you so much for sharing your work as well, because this is looking awesome. I know that we didn't really talk about like how it looks right now, right? But I think, yeah, it looks great. It looks great. I like the tiles a lot. Oh, you know what? One thing. Sorry, I can't help myself. Is think about the silhouette, right? So now you have a very very light silhouette, right? But what actually could be cool is if you emphasize some of these shapes. So you have the roof come out like way more, and then you still have like the wood come out like this or something like that, right? But you actually have like the roof, no, maybe even the overhanging more. Like really try to push the silhouette and like make it look really unique. Because right now it kind of fills the shape a bit too much, right? Like it kind of follows it in like a very, very kind manner. Where also, I'll go again. Like a quick win here could be vertex painting as well. Want to set that up too, to kind of blend these little bits in that you're adding in foliage. Also do like a bit of moss painting on the tiles. You could then also use that on like the wood, right? You start like massaging things together in that way. But that's enough. I'll leave it at that. I'm gonna let you run crazy. And I'm curious to see where it's gonna go in the future. Populous, thank you so much. Great stuff. Thanks so much, man. This really makes my day. That's awesome. It's awesome to hear. Yeah, honestly, I'm really, really excited about this. So, great job so far. Like for everyone, right? I know that some of the conversations were more difficult to have, but that doesn't make me less excited to see like the gun finished or like what Isukaru is gonna do with the game jam, right? Like, I'm really excited to see what everyone's gonna do and what choices are gonna be made in the future. So, great stuff, everyone. Thank you so much for sharing it as well. This is awesome. All right. Oh, it's the other screen. Hey, there we go. Neat. Hi, Casey. I agree. It's all really neat. And then Buns is saying, once you're done with this environment, adding VFX. Yeah, VFX. Yeah, really putting the cherry on the cake there would be really nice. Awesome. All right, I'm not gonna linger too long, because yeah, I had a stream yesterday as well, stream today. So thank you so much for checking out our weekly work in progress event. If you want to get feedback yourself, feel free to join our community. I do this on a weekly basis, so feel free to join in whenever. And yeah, I wish you all a nice Wednesday, and you can see me on Friday. I'll be doing my own art stream. I'll be working on my medieval scene a bit more. I think know what I'm gonna do yet, because I haven't done anything this week. On that environment, that is. Maybe we'll continue working on the houses. Sure. How can you join the Discord server? That's a great question. So the easiest thing to do would actually to go to our site, and there will be like a sign up button that will take you directly to Patreon. The other option would also to become a member here on YouTube. That's an additional way. If you wanted to do it that way, it's up to you. Thank you so much for asking. Yes, but that will do it for me. I wish you all a great day and stay creative. Bye-bye.